Hi, I'm Blair. Welcome to A Geezer's Perspective. My understanding is that people in their reflective final days regret things they didn't do more than things that they did do that didn't work out. Bucket lists may be a factor. I've never been entirely comfortable with the idea. Even when I was younger, it seemed to offer permission to postpone living. It created a special category for things you supposedly wanted to do someday, but not today. I was always more drawn to the Nike philosophy. Do it now. Why set aside something meaningful for an imaginary future if it could be done in the present? It's a procrastination enabler. And I didn't need that. I was a skilled procrastinator. Of course, reality complicates the do it now philosophy. There are things you genuinely cannot do right now. Money reasons, time, work, and family obligations may make certain dreams temporarily, sometimes permanently, impossible. For such things, perhaps a bucket list makes sense. If we can do it someday, we will. In the meantime, it's fun to fantasize. I have never formally kept such a list, and as I was trying to find something in my background that might qualify, I was surprised when one did surface. For many years, my wife and I watched Guy Lombardo and his Royal Canadians perform on New Year's Eve from the Waldorf Astoria in New York City. It was a TV ritual shared with millions of Americans. A gentle, elegant, classy ushering in of the new year. Didn't involve standing outdoors for 8 hours and who knows what kind of weather, listening to performers I don't want to hear, and probably wearing a diaper. At some point, my wife and I began to think, we really ought to be up there at the Waldorf Astoria in person someday. It was classic bucket list material. And then, one day we learned that Guy Lombardo, after 48 years, would no longer be performing. Big old magic marker took that dream off the list. It shouldn't have been on it. Some things do not belong on a list for later. They belong on what I would call the Nike list. I was impressed by friends of mine at work who had an interesting bucket list, do it now approach. In their 40s, they began to travel and they were preparing for an ambitious trip to a distant, exotic part of the world. And I said, so you've traveled everywhere else, I guess? And they said, no, we haven't even been to England. I was stunned. England seemed like the obvious starting point. Well, their explanation was simple and wise. England, they said, would be still there when they were old. It required no unusual stamina or physical demands. But certain places, remote, rugged, were best experienced while you're young and strong. So they went to those places first. Well, it was certainly not procrastination. It was simply strategy. They weren't postponing life. They were simply organizing it wisely and properly. This does raise another important distinction, I think. A bucket list is not the same as goal setting. Goals are central. They shape your life's direction. They're important. They require commitment and effort, persistence, follow-up. They are things that you work toward deliberately. Bucket items, by contrast, are optional. Do them or don't. The danger arises when something that truly matters to you gets misplaced into the optional category. When something essential is quietly demoted into something merely desirable. Perhaps the real lesson is this. It's fine to have a list of things you might like to do someday. Just be careful what you put in it. The wise and prolific writer Anonymous summed it up by saying, "Someday is the most dangerous word in the English language."